It's not news that local news is at a tipping point. Local journalism keeps us informed, holds parties accountable, and shines a light on our communities. But these are hard times for legacy media. According to Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism, an average of 2.5 local newspapers close every week in our country. In Delaware, there are far fewer journalists working here than even a few years ago. So where are Delawareans going to find the vital community news that they need? I sat down with two people working to fill voids with very different approaches. Allison LaVine leads the team at Spotlight Delaware, a new nonprofit newsroom with a unique business plan. And at DETV, Ivan Thomas is focusing his cameras on all the positive things happening in Wilmington and around the state. I found this conversation enlightening. So let's get into it. Welcome to Conversations with Kelly, where we take a deep dive into topics at the forefront of the business community. I'm Kelly Basil, Vice President of the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce, and today I'm with Ivan Thomas, Founder and Executive Director of DETV, and Allison LaVine, CEO and Founder of the Local Journalism Initiative Delaware. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you both.
Oh,
Thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm with Allison.
This is going to be a good one, folks. Before we get started, I do want to give you both a moment to just introduce yourselves, talk about who you are, what you do. Ivan?
I'll let Allison go.
Okay.
I'll let
Ladies
Allison
first.
go. Ladies first.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm Allison LaVine. I am the founder and CEO of the Local Journalism Initiative and also Spotlight Delaware, which is our flagship initiative, which is a new community-powered, nonprofit, collaborative newsroom for Delaware. And we are focused on empowering communities with the information and the tools that they need and inspiring them and equipping them to participate in our democracy and our community throughout the first state.
And I would say this is a huge passion project of yours, so congratulations for finally launching.
It really is. It's something I've been building, noodling on for about 15 years and really working in earnest for about 5 and really excited to be now, I have a team, left my day job on January 12th, and 5 months later, we're almost at a team. We'll have 9 people as of next week. So
that's exciting.
It's very exciting, yeah.
You're almost as big as the state chamber. We're 10 people. And a side note, I'm big into art. I love your logo. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you. Shout out for Launch Point for helping us to design our logo and our beautiful brand.
It's great. Ivan?
Awesome. Ivan Thomas. I am just a guy from around the way, from the community, right? I had an idea about 15 years ago to create a platform that the community can use, regardless of race, color, a religious background, politics. I wanted to create something that brought people together. And a couple years later, here we are at DETV. We create everything from kid shows to political shows to just giving good information out to the community, and it's fun. I get paid to work with good friends and do something I love. I mean, it's the American dream.
Now, both of you kind of left what you were doing to start this. Allison, you already kind of hinted at that, but what led each of you to launch DETV and Spotlight Delaware? Like, how did you get there?
Well, I saw the need in the community. I saw the gaps. It's happening all over the country, but what we're seeing is, like in your little line notes, Kelly, it's not news that local news is in trouble. The folks who work at the news journal WDEL, our news partners downstate, these are hardworking folks, but the rise of the internet really shifted the environment for local news. And what happened is it gutted all the revenue streams. So what we've seen is a real decline in local news over the past 20 years. And this is something that I am passionate about. I started my career as a reporter. My late husband was the editorial page editor at the News Journal. It was Jason Levine. And I just really wanted to do something good for Delaware, something good for democracy, for community, and for journalism. And I wanted to do that in partnership. I didn't want this to be something that we just created a new nonprofit newsroom to start a new newsroom, I wanted it to be something that would build up other newsrooms. I want it to be ultimately something that supports DETV, that helps Ivan do the work that he's doing. We already have formal partnerships with 5 newsrooms around the state, and we are trying to build those up because we want to see the whole local news and information ecosystem get stronger, because ultimately, this is not about journalism. Journalism is a vehicle. This is about our democracy and our communities. And we need to be getting more information into the hands of more people, more diverse people in more communities, so that we can have a more robust democracy. A really true democracy depends on robust, diverse conversation. And when we talk about diversity, we're talking about race, religion, ethnicity. We're also talking about perspectives. We need to have that diversity of thought to have a true democracy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ivan, follow up on that.
And she's right. Like, when I created DETV, it was more of, I was in depression. And I was in a Buddhist temple, and in that Buddhist temple, this lady walks up to me and she says, do you understand the power of pictures? And I was like, no, because at that part, while I was there, it was one of the darkest moments of my life. And she said, pictures have what we call still energy. It can have a person relive a moment within a second of them watching and looking at the pictures. So I just started going out and taking pictures. And also what she said was, pictures can make a person relive a moment. And when I started understanding the science of photography, and then I hooked up with Saquon Stimson, a good friend of mine first, and an amazing photojournalist, was teaching me how to tell stories through photography. And then I saw that gap that you was talking about, Allison, the gap of information, the threat of people trying to destroy the democracy, right? And the question was, like any business person, is there's a hole, how can I fill it? So what we did over a period of time was just to build the content, and I studied a little bit, I studied a lot of it, and overstudied about journalism, and said, okay, the only thing we have, and I think at this time it was definitely the decline of the news journal, and where I wasn't looking at it like the point you were looking at it when social media came in, it killed the revenue, and it did. So all those people got displaced. So I said, let me try to create something that can not just be informative, but bring people together. Yep. And what happened was, over just a bunch of trial and error, we came up with, oh my God, let's do DETV News. We haven't seen a news show in a very, very long time. I want to say over 20 years. I remember growing up, it was Channel 2 News in Delaware. Every kid in high school was excited about seeing themselves on Channel 2 News when it came to sports. That wasn't there anymore. So we said, let's create that. Let's create something that give people hometown pride. And then later on, after I think we did about 300 segments, I met Allison, and Allison was telling me about what she was doing, what she wanted to do at the time. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant because this is all about democracy, right? About giving people quality, non-biased information. And when I met Allison and she was telling me about that, I wanted to pat her on the back and tell her, yeah, because that's what we need, right? So that's how I created it, and that's where we are right now.
And having something that's Delor Centric is really important. I think, being so close to Philadelphia, sometimes we get kind of lost in that regional news. Yeah. And so having that focus is really huge.
All the energy gets sucked out. Delaware is not a rural community exactly. We have portions of Delaware that are rural, but the way we are geographically positioned between these huge news markets means that all the attention gets sucked into Philadelphia, gets sucked into even Baltimore, even into New York. And we just have this gap. I know folks in southern Jersey talk about the same thing, is that when you are sort of 2 or 3 concentric circles away from a major metropolis like that, the attention is gone. And what happens is you have these big news markets where they parachute in because they have limited resources. They don't have the resources to really cover Delaware. So they parachute in when there's a shooting or an arson or some, big, fancy political trial in Delaware or something terrible happening. But then you don't have any of the ongoing community information, and you don't have the local coverage. And we need oversight at the local level in the same way that we need it at the federal level. Mm-hmm. And we also need what Ivan is talking about. What Ivan's really focusing on is, what's the good stuff happening in Delaware? What can bring us together in Delaware? And when you are just dependent on a media market that's 30 miles away,
that doesn't care.
They don't care, and they just don't have the resources.
Yeah.
I mean, and I want to be careful that we're not, and I know this is not where Ivan goes either. We don't want to be negative about media folks who are out there now. I mean, the reporters and the editors out there in the community now are busting their tails, doing everything they can. And I know, Tim Furlong's doing amazing work, right? I mean, Esteban Parra over at the News Journal, incredible work. Chris Carl at WDEL doing amazing stuff.
Yeah.
There's only so many of them,
right.
And they cannot be at every ribbon cutting. They can't do what Channel 2 used to do. They can't cover the high school sports.
They can't go to Legislative Hall every day.
They can't. Yeah. So how do we as a community support and build that up? Let's quit saying, oh, I hate this outlet and, the News Journal is a rat. Let's not talk about that stuff anymore.
Right.
Let's make it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the way that we do make it better is collaborative, right?
Yes, exactly.
Because I have, and what I say is my side of the fence, and that's my audience, and your side of the fence, right? And if we can take, and what's so important about what Allison does and the collaborative is they're not just telling good stuff. They're holding people accountable for, and that's what's needed. Like when I came out with DETV, it was 200% positive news 100% of the time. That is great. But only to an extent, because someone needs to hold these people, these politicians, these business owners, hold their feet to the fire. And that's where this collaborative effort really, really can help Delaware. And what you're talking about is absolutely right. And it's so much more to that, right? Because when you look at it, how it was back in 95, 90, 85, they were those big markets. They just had to send one or two people to come cover this area. Yeah. But with the change in the advancement of social media, now things are different, right? It is so different. So now we're on the same level playing field.
Exactly.
And where all the life was, I don't want to say sucked out of Delaware because it just never existed. Now we're building a market in an area that it never existed. Television, news broadcasts, a social media where people and the collective can hold people to the fire, where the News Journal was doing that at one point and it was doing it really, really well. So now it's a new time, a new age, and new companies and new organizations that are coming in, showing people it's not just we just don't care. We love you. And we're going to hold these people to the fire.
And let's put it in context for the listeners, because a lot of folks may not realize that in the time period that Ivan's talking about, late 90s, there were more than 110 local reporters and editors working for the News Journal. Wow. Today, there are fewer than 30.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Fewer than 30. So that is fewer than 30 people trying like crazy to cover the state of Delaware at our anchor news organization. They cannot do it alone. And that's, I think, where folks like Ivan and me are coming in and trying to help lift that up.
Yeah. And I think and one thing that we definitely need to make it straight right now on this podcast is that we are not in competition. We are in collaboration.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because people are trying to pose that, Spotlight is trying to take DETV spot, DETV no, that is not the case.
Oh, I didn't know that part either.
Oh my God. But no, and I just want to make it straight because when people understand where we both stand, we can make a bigger impact, right?
Absolutely.
We are not in competition. We are in collaboration because that's how you bring all your resources to the table, and who wins, and that's the community.
Well, because you're bound by, I think, a higher mission, right?
Yeah.
Like you just want to get information to the people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And people consume information in different ways. And this is something that Ivan and I have spent a lot of time talking about. Is, when we did, through the Local Journalism Initiative, we did a statewide ecosystem assessment where we talked to about 300 people throughout the state and really did some research to understand how do people consume information and what kind of local news and information do they want. And that was the genesis for Spotlight Delaware. And a lot of people talked about DETV, but not everybody sits down and watches the 6 o'clock news anymore. Not a lot of people are picking up a physical print newspaper anymore. And not everybody is going to go to a specific news website once a day to check the news. People are on their phones and they are watching video. They are reading. They are listening to podcasts. They are looking at graphics. They're looking at memes for journalism. They're looking at TikTok for journalism. And frankly, I do not care. I want us to be producing good local news and information. And where Ivan really excels is broadcast. And where I think Spotlight is demonstrating that we really excel is getting into this deep dive. Let's find out. Let's get investigative. Let's hold power to account. Let's ask the tough questions. Let's follow the money.
Agreed.
Something that we live by here, because what you just described, Allison, I feel like is my everyday. But people consume information differently. And so our philosophy here is putting out the same thing 40 different ways.
That's right.
And 40 different, versions.
You have to go where people are. And that is what Ivan is doing. And that is what we are doing at Spotlight. And we're trying to do that in a lot of different ways. And what that means when you say go where people are is it means go to them on the platforms they're on. So, people sometimes turn their noses up at TikTok. Oh, well, if that's where people are, let's get the news there. Let's get the local, let's get something on TikTok that says, please go vote for mayor. Here's the top 3 candidates. And here's 15 seconds that tells you how you can do that. Right. And then let's hope that they're going to go vote, that they're going to come to a Spotlight Delaware and read, get in depth, learn more. Not everybody's going to do that, but we got to get to where people are. We also need to go to people in the languages that they speak, right? And sometimes that means Spotlight Delaware by the end of the year is working to go bilingual. So we're going to be reaching more into Hispanic, Spanish speaking audiences and developing partners with the existing Spanish language newsrooms throughout the state. So going to people in their own languages.
So important.
And sometimes it just means in their own style, which I think is something that Ivan particularly excels at. Let me stop talking. You talk about that.
And thank you, Allison. And that's the thing is one day I woke up and it was like, you know what? And maybe about a year and a half ago, I was like, it's not about TV. That has always been my thing. It's like, it's not about TV. The days of watching appointed TV watching is done and over with, right? So I went and hit the streets and sent some surveys out. How do you consume content? I wanted to know content first. My mother, God bless her, mwah, she says, I watch TikTok. I get my news from TikTok, right? And I'm like, something's wrong. Okay, so we had a meeting and I told my team,
she's not a regular mom, she's a cool mom.
Yeah, she's a cool mom, right? But I'm like, okay, if Bernice is getting her information from TikTok, how many other women her age, her demographic, is getting their news from TikTok, right? And then we said, let's start making content just for Bernice, and let's do some A/B testing. Let's see what happens, right? And through the roof, people were engaging, not just watching, but engaging. And then we said, let's start making other content for the same content you make for TikTok. You can't make for Instagram.
Correct.
So then we had to change that format where that now is another position, 5 or 10 positions. It's a lot of work, but that's how people are being misled and guided to right decisions because people are changing the news to fit that platform and just feeding it to them over and over. So, and it's like, I remember back in the day, you wanted to be a journalist, you had to go to college. You had to get a degree for it. Now we have these self-proclaimed journalists that are hitting the streets with bad information. That's what makes what Allison and I do so important because they are doing the investigating. We're doing the investigating. They are doing the distribution. We are doing the distribution. And here in Delaware, where it used to be an oasis, is now a desert of just good journalism and good news and good information. And those are the gaps that we and other organizations are I don't believe in try, are going to fill.
We keep talking about, social media and attention spans and how people are consuming information. And I do think people are getting a lot thrown at them, whether or not it's true information. So how do you, in your platforms, cut through that clutter?
I think we have to build trust. And I think that's easier to do at the local level than at the national level. Because, I've lived in Delaware 26 years now. I'm blessed that I have a community here, and the folks who work with us have community. So there is something to that, I know this person, I've met this person, I saw this person at Walgreens or whatever, that helps with that. I think it's also holding ourselves accountable. If we make a mistake, we need to own that. And I think that I think it's important to be balanced, which is sometimes, some of my friends get upset with me about that because they might think that I need to be leaning one way or the other with the information that we're putting out. We're very careful to try to elevate all voices, progressive voices, moderate voices, and conservative voices. And in Delaware, conservative voices are not very loud. Mm-hmm. So we need to make a pointed effort, just like when we are dipping in to make sure that we elevate Black and brown voices. We need to also be making sure that we're elevating voices that are more conservative too, so that we have that diversity of thought. And we also can build trust, because we are trying to say we're not presenting information with an agenda. This is not information that is just for Democrats or just for Republicans. This is just information for our community. And that, I think, is where we start to really build trust. The other piece of it, I will say, is going into the community. Mm-hmm. That is something Ivan has been doing for years. It's something that we take very seriously at Spotlight Delaware. A lot of newsrooms will talk about their community engagement work. We live our community engagement. We have just come through a series of 12 community listening sessions, including 2 in Spanish and 1 in Haitian Creole. We go up and down the state. My editorial team spends probably about 30% of their time physically in the community. We're in Seaford, we're in Milford, we're in Ellesmere. We are up and down the state talking with people and listening to them and hearing their concerns, and particularly seeking out the people we don't hear from that much. And that's enriching the information that we can put back out to the community, and it's also helping us to build those relationships and trust.
Yeah. Ours is really, really simple. It's PUTP. Pick up the phone, right? Pick up the phone. Trust but verify. There's a lot of misinformation out here. Yeah. And one thing that I've learned is it's real simple to, hey, did you say this? What's going on? Right? Because it's our duty to report what's correct. Mm-hmm. We cannot give our opinion, or anything like that. It's just pick up the phone and then, trust and verify.
I think it's also really important for us that we're super transparent about where our funding comes from. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we do see not happening sometimes. Yeah. We want to be cautious, and we accept funding from all different kinds of funders and different individuals, and those folks sometimes may have agendas. That's why we have a really strong and clear gift acceptance and editorial independence policy, so that we're a 501c3. We need people to donate to us. We need to be able to accept donations. We also need to be able to maintain our editorial independence. Mm-hmm. And that means that if we get a grant from DuPont, we're still going to cover DuPont independently. Mm-hmm. If we get a gift from, the Buccinis or whoever, we still have to be able to cover those issues in these communities. Agreed. And these business people with balance. Mm-hmm.
You have to, because it's a fine line. And being that we're both 501c3s, everything's on record, right? And sometimes people do expect you to be more lenient. And the answer is heck no, because we have a job to do, right?
Right.
And it's just that simple. There's nothing else around that.
What advice do you have for people on this topic? I want to encourage people to get engaged either with your organizations or others and just help this movement.
I think that there are a number of key ways that people can support both of our organizations. And I want folks to think about focusing on local news and information. Obviously, you can make charitable donations to our organizations. At Spotlight Delaware, we also are inviting people to work with us, to partner with us on sponsored content. We need folks who are interested in getting involved with our boards, our board of directors and our advisory board. You can learn a lot of stuff at spotlightdelaware.org, or you can contact me directly to learn more about it, and I would love to talk about that. But my key message, I think, is let's move away from some of that national media focus. All the national media is about is the difference between the R and the D. But if you bring it down to the local level, let's talk about, what are the policy nuances? What does Brian Shoup actually think about education policy in Delaware? Let's forget that he has a letter after his name. What does Sarah McBride actually think about development issues? Let's forget that she has a D after her name. Let's get into the person and the local decision making, and let's complicate that conversation.
And Ivan, before I let you jump in, being that we are an advocacy organization, I can't help but jump into that. But I think what you just said is so important, because I think people, they consume that information on a federal level. They're very concerned about, what's going on with presidential debates. But so much of decision making really happens at the state level or the local level. And a lot of people, I think, forget to pay attention to those governments.
And this is where we have more influence.
Yeah. I think people don't know that, though. I think a lot of people out in Delaware, they really don't understand how politics works, right? They just think, because we got a new president or what they doing down in Washington, that's the end all be all. It's our job to educate, because I used to work customer service back in the day, right? And one of the things was they said, first thing you do is educate your customer, right? And that's what we need to do with our whether not customers, they're people that pay attention, our listeners, our viewers. We have to educate them like, hey, this is what this is, and this is how this works. And now this is how you can be a part of it to make a change. So it's not just about creating content, it's about creating amazing content, but also creating a listener and creating a viewer that understands policy, how policy works, or who they need to go to. Because a lot of people in Delaware, they don't vote because they don't know how the system works. And the concentration is and should be on local. One thing that we do at DETV is we believe, and I took this model, and forgive me if I offend anyone, I took this model from Hitler. And what Hitler did, that horrible act Hitler did, he started when kids were young, and they made cartoons. He had a movie, a lady that made a movie. Her name was Nina. I can't pronounce her last name, but she was a movie maker, right? And she made Hitler look bigger than he actually was. And they kept feeding this media to everyone that could watch. But what they did was they also made cartoons for the kids. So what we do at DETV is we start them off young. And thanks to the Mayor Mike Brzezicki in the city of Wilmington, he actually gave us a grant that allowed us to teach. And matter of fact, we have one of the students here teach the students journalism, broadcast, photojournalism. And this year we teamed up with 4 youth. And what we do is we teach them these skills, show them how important it is, and then equip them with equipment, camera, light, microphones, tripods, to go back into the community and now create something great for the community. And one of the rules is, like, okay, I give you this camera. It will break as soon as you shoot something negative. You have to shoot something that uplifts your community. So to get involved is that we believe that it starts young, because so the next generation can grow up, and even just like planting a seed within them. So when they go to college, it's crazy, because now I go speak at universities and I see some of the kids that I taught at Kumba, like, Mr. Ivan, I'm graduating. What mass comments? I'm like, oh my God, it's crazy. So, but back to your question, it's just to get involved is share, read, follow both of us, be a part of the conversation. Just don't be the conversation, the subject, but be a part of the conversation on how we can make a change. And if you're out in the community and if you see something that's going on that needs to be talked about, send it to us, send it to Spotlight, because that's how we're going to build community trust, and community advocacy.
I tell people that all the time. The State Chamber has a bi-monthly magazine, and I tell all of our members, if you want to share something, I am always looking for good content. Please pitch it to me.
Right.
So we got to wrap up. I want to transition to our Combo Connection, where I let you both give a shout out to a person or an organization in Delaware, something positive. Allison, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out to my own team, because, man, they are just doing amazing work helping me build this. Jake Owens is our editor-in-chief, and I'm going to specifically name the folks who were there with me from the very beginning. Jake Owens was our editor-in-chief, is our editor-in-chief. David Stradley is our director of membership and community engagement, just doing amazing work and leadership for us throughout the community. And I want to thank the first two reporters that we hired are Carl Baker, who's just a legendary reporter and just doing incredible investigative work, and Jose Ignacio Castaneda Perez, who's really helping us to understand and broaden our impact throughout the community.
Ivan?
I definitely have to ride off that. This is the team, our team at DETV. We are young. We are on fire. I couldn't do anything without my team. Everything revolves around team. Outside of that, I want to give definitely a shout out to my brothers that's in the conglomerate that are doing some great stuff. You know who you are. It's too many to say. But a shout out to Wilmington and Delaware. Like, I love this place, man. This state is freaking amazing. When you just, how when people say you have to peel back like the onion and get to it? Like, nah, just go outside. Go outside and you'll see how great this state really is. So shout out to my state.
I love that. I'm going to feed you something that I sing to myself all the time, but maybe you can actually use it. But the Broadway hairspray, Good Morning Baltimore, Wilmington has the same number of syllables. So Good Morning Wilmington.
Love it. Love it.
You should.
So does Delaware. Good Morning, Delaware.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
See,
it could really work.
I'm really about to change the name of Good Morning Wilmington, the show, to Good Morning Delaware.
There you go.
I'm really thinking about that because it's the entire.
Yeah, you should.
Okay, Good Morning Delaware. It is
your DETV
coming September.
Very exciting! Wow, we just renamed your show. I'll piggyback off for the two of you too and give a shout out to my team. Specifically Regina Donato and Damon Howard. We are sitting in our newly renovated office in our podcast room. We've done all of the research and purchased podcast equipment to be able to do this here in our own office, which is very exciting. Our fearless leader, Mike Caranta, Helena Rodriguez, Melissa Brayman, Tyler Mitchick, who's doing the good work down at Leg Hall, Amanda Schimmel. Oh my gosh, am I naming everyone? Carrie Welcher, our events manager. You can't forget her. And of course, Ken Evans, who is also known as the Connector.
Oh, wow.
He really is. If you need to meet someone in Delaware, go to Ken.
Love it.
With that, Allison, you already shared how to get in touch with you. Ivan, if anyone wants to talk to you, how do we reach you?
Send a pigeon. No. Go ahead. Ivan Thomas Media on Instagram. DETV, you could Google it across any platform. It's there. But most of all, thanks for having us.
This is great fun, Kelly.
This was really fun. If you have any questions, suggestions for future episode topics, or just want to get in touch with me or any of my colleagues at the State Chamber, our contact info can be found at www.dscc.com. And you can also find the State Chamber on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and now Instagram. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I really did enjoy this. I feel like I learned a lot. I hope people also participate and kind of lift up local journalism. It's a important thing.
dope.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Conversations with Kelly, brought to you by the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. Before we sign off, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. I know podcast hosts say this all the time, but your support is invaluable, and it helps other listeners easily find us. I'm your host, Kelly Basil. We'll see you soon.